Okay, so here's what we're gonna do today. Well, you're seeing a bunch of images on your screen, and I bet you're probably wondering, what in the world is this about? Well, we got to talk about something serious, okay? And the reason we're talking about this is because this is rooted in philosophy. Like this is again, all philosophy is just a way of life, how you live your life. This is a philosophy. It's called hedonism. Okay. Um, the images that you see are things that people look at as being pleasurable. Okay. We're just going to leave it at that. But I use these images because they get your attention. And I think this is something worth us kind of diving into. Okay. So hedonism, kind of the take on this that I have, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but how modern society has taken what hedonism initially meant, which was living in the moment, to YOLO. You only live once. Because think about it. When people say YOLO, what do they mean by that? They aren't speaking just from like a spiritual sense or even like a psychological sense or even just the fact that just in a factual statement. No, when they say, well, when most people say you only live once, it's like, okay, well, why not do whatever I'm thinking about doing? You only live one time, why not do it now? Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why we need to be careful with it, that type of thinking. But that type of thinking isn't new. It originally begins a little bit earlier. So, what is hedonism? So, hedonism itself is, let me move myself. I'll put myself down here with Epicurus. Okay. So, hedonism itself is the school of thought that pleasure is the most important pursuit of mankind. And the only thing that is good for an individual is, again, pleasure. Pleasure is the only good, pain is the only bad. And so, life's goal, the goal of life, is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Now, this goes back to the bell ringer that I had. Can pain be beneficial? Think about it. When you lift weights, does that hurt? It should. It shouldn't. You shouldn't like injure yourself. It should hurt. No pain, no gain, right? The only way you gain muscle, gain strength, is by putting your body through adversity. Same like running. Why do people run? That's not pleasurable. It can be, but it's not always. Sometimes it's painful. Not being able to breathe well, like that's kind of painful. Hold on, now.
Micah Chipini, can you please come to the front office? Micah Chipini, please come to the front office. Thank you.
Okay. We'll take care of Micah. All right. So yeah, this is what hedonism is in its basic sense. Pleasure is good, pain is bad. Maximize pleasure, minimize pain. But pain can be something good. I mean, think about it. I mean, think about this again. You're in a bad relationship with somebody. You're in a bad relationship with somebody, and y'all break up. You go through all this heartbreak. You were in love with this person, but you know, I guess it really wasn't bad until it ended. They all of a sudden one day break up with you. It hurts. It hurts. But you learned something from it. Maybe there were signs that this weren't going well, and now you can see them a little bit more clearly. That's something that's painful. Heartbreak is painful, but it actually, if you learn something from it, it may help you in the future. Okay, let's continue. Uh, can I just click over? Uh-oh. All right, there we go. All right, so the history of hedonism. So the history of hedonism, here we go. This is just a brief history, very brief. So this was first taught at the Cyrenaic school in Greece, 4th century BC. This is around the time, again, of Socrates and Plato. They taught that physical pleasures are stronger, I should say stronger, than mental pleasures. What the body feels is a lot stronger than what our brains may feel or our brains may think. But again, I would like to remind you that we talked over the past several weeks about how our senses can deceive us, and that's all senses are, is just ways that we physically measure things. They taught that knowledge is subjective. We'll talk more about that. Maybe not right now. But we'll talk more about that. They thought that pleasure should not lead to pain. So this is, I want you to see kind of the evolution of hedonism. It wasn't always this whole YOLO mentality. That's more so modern culture. Pleasure should not lead to pain. Future pleasure is just as important as current pleasure. So you shouldn't go out and just spend your entire paycheck on something because, well, that's not a good practice. If you continuously do that, then you're going to be in trouble down the road because you're going to owe a lot of money. The Cyrenaic school was replaced by the Epicureans, and Epicurus is thought to be the first real hedonist. About a century or two later, So Epicurus taught to seek modest pleasure. So you don't have to live in luxury. Just be happy with the little things in life. Like, dude, if your dog is up in bed with you, like, just dude, have fun snuggling your dog and reading a book. Like, enjoy the small things. So the best way to find pleasure is to gain knowledge and friendship and live a virtuous life. Believe that the state of peace, like actually being, having tranquility, is freedom from fear. So I don't think that we could look at that and say that hedonism, oh, this is fundamentally evil, because it's fundamentally, it has some flaws, but I mean, I think we can agree with some of these tenets. But hedonism today is, when we think of hedonism, we do not think of these people. We do not think of the Cyrenaics, the Epicureans. We think of, well, let's see what we think about. So hedonism today, then versus today. So the idea of a hedonistic lifestyle today would have the founder of hedonism, Epicurus, turning over in his grave. Hedonism today is about pursuing pleasure at all costs, but the philosophy of hedonism, as described in ancient Greece, is more about living in the moment and enjoying, the simple things in life. Today, hedonism has become an excuse for drinking, smoking, partying, sexual promiscuity, gambling, etc. Modern societies turn hedonism from live in the moment to you only live once. Or maybe another way to say it, live for the moment. If you want an example of hedonism today, take a look at the kids that went to spring break in Florida and their interviews with local news stations amongst this pandemic. I wrote this initially in late March, early April. And this was a big news story. Go to YouTube, type in coronavirus spring break, and it should be the first thing that pops up. You'll see these spring breakers, these college kids just talking about, hey, we're just here to party. Like, you know, that virus is just going to do whatever, whatever happens, happens, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to enjoy ourselves. It's my birthday. I'm just trying to turn up. We're just living for the moment. Those are all things they exactly said in that video. I'm not making any of that up. If you don't believe me, go look at it. That is what people think of when they see hedonism today. But this leads to something. This leads to something that can be dangerous, or many things that can be dangerous. First, we have to look at the pleasure paradox. So, the pleasure paradox, what it is it's the pursuit of pleasure tends to have a negative effect over the long run, as you see listed below. So, let's use an example: smoking cigarettes. So, why don't everybody smoke cigarettes? People that smoke cigarettes apparently love them, or if they didn't, they would stop, right? Well, that's actually going to lead to number two with addiction, but health issues. Like, now again, people may smoke cigarettes, and in the moment it makes them feel better, but down the long run, they know they're compromising their health to do so. I actually have a nice little chart behind me about smoking cigarettes. I use this in class today. Could lead to addiction, nicotine, cigarettes, or something harder like alcohol or drugs or gambling. Many things can be addictive. Damaged relationships. I mean, think about it. If you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you'll cheat on them with whoever you are interested in the moment, well, then you're not gonna have good relationships. Think about if you do that with to your wife or your husband. Like, even if you don't like split, like, that relationship is damaged, and it's really hard to gain trust. It's a lot harder to regain trust. Baby daddy, baby mama issues. You never know. You never know. You never know. And lastly, financial problems. Again, if your only concern is doing what feels good in the moment, then you're going to spend money. You're going to spend money on things you don't need. Imagine if I spent my paycheck on things that I don't need every time. Like, so let's say I get paid and I want to buy a new car because that makes me happy. I buy a new car. Let's say next paycheck, I get a whole brand new wardrobe because that makes me happy. Well, what happens when I start struggling to pay my bills? Well, it makes me happy. I'm just doing what feels good. I'm living for the moment. YOLO, you only live once. You think that's going to help? No, that's not going to help at all. That's honestly probably going to make it worse. I'm probably going to lose some respect from people. Um, so this is hedonism, modern day hedonism, a little bit more. We're going to look at Stoicism, and again, kind of how it's evolved a little bit. But we're going to look at Stoicism and how it is not maybe the opposite, but it is in direct competition with hedonism. All right. See you guys later.